Hi, this is Audrey Blair, and you're listening to the Change is Hard podcast, episode 12. Hi, thank you for being here today. I am really excited to share this interview with you. It is a very vulnerable story, but also very inspiring. I had the privilege of interviewing Jenni Hopkins, who is the owner and proprietor of Jenni Earl, and she'll talk about what that business is and what she does. But her story really is about rediscovery as she found herself in a really, really dark place and coming from a debilitating depression to now where she feels like she's offering her gift to the world. And I hope that you really get something out of it. I appreciate how much she did share. She owns her story, she owns the places that she's been. And we get into some of the small incremental things it takes to go from that place to where she is now. So, really, I hope that you can take this as an encouragement that no matter where you are, that there are things that you can do in order to step out and step up into a place that is more fitting for you. Enjoy this time, enjoy this interview. If I ask something that's off limits, just say,
I don't have a whole lot that's off limits.
I didn't think so. I didn't think so based on what you previously shared.
I think because that's part of my strength.
It is. Yeah. Well, most of us don't understand that our stories are part of our strengths because it's very difficult and then there's a vulnerability. I think sometimes I get stuck with what is interesting about my story, and then when you tell it, then people are like, yeah, but that's kind of cool. And the road that you've traveled is very unique to you. So while we're talking, we may as well just get started, right? Okay. Hi, Jenni. Thank you so much for joining me. Well, actually, I'm joining you today.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Glad to have you on the ranch.
Appreciate that. It's nice to be in person.
Mm-hmm.
All of my interviews have been virtual, so to be close enough to take a drive down the freeway, the next town over, and be in an office, I almost forgot how should I look? What's presentable?
Anything goes here.
I know, right? The top is usually presentable, but I'm like, pants. Yes. I need pants.
Pants with zippers and buttons.
So thank you so much for having me. And we actually came across each other because I attended a women's networking event a few months back now. And you were one of the panelists for, I believe, women entrepreneurs.
Yeah, it was like lessons from founders or something.
Yes. And I really appreciated your story. I loved your story. What I appreciated the most was your vulnerability in telling your story. And I thought, wow, what a great story to tell. As you know, the podcast is called Change is Hard. And the road sometimes can be a little bit challenging. It's not impossible. No. And sometimes we make it a little bit harder than it needs to be, but it is hard no matter what. Once our minds get programmed into a certain way or a certain way of thinking or being, it is challenging to make that shift. And I think sometimes people don't understand just some of the small things we need to do in order to make those shifts. They either go, well, it sounds easy, and because I can't do it, there must be something wrong with me.
Yes.
Right?
And that you don't really realize, you think habits are like smoking cigarettes or like walking every day or those, but every behavior is habitual, is a habit. And so if you think about, even like what you do first thing, do your feet hit the ground? Do you take a minute to think? Like those are habits that you can shift.
Yes.
Like you said, very slowly over time.
Mm-hmm. Or pick up your phone.
Yes. Which that's a habit I'm trying to break. I'm like, I don't need to look at email as soon as my eyes open.
Exactly. You're right. And our brains are designed to be efficient. So it is designed for us to not have to think about some of those things that we're doing and what we feed it, what we do. And our thoughts are habitual as well. I think sometimes we forget about that.
Yes.
But before we actually get into all of that, all the nitty gritty, can you just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, and then we can get into your story.
Okay, yeah, sure. My name is Jenni Hopkins. I own a company called Jenni Earl, which I founded 5 years ago. And I founded it on the heels of coming through some really tough stuff. Change is hard. Yeah. I learned, I was kind of, I guess I was a catalyst of the changes early. So I went through a pretty deep depression in my mid-30s. I had 2 little children at home, 2 little boys. I think I was sinking under the weight of expectation of, either that is heaped upon us from media, or that we heap upon ourselves from trying to mirror media. And also just like family and all the people who were like, you should be this kind of mother. And I was trying to keep everybody happy and keep the boys looking, groomed and happy and all that, when they would rather play in the mud. So I just kind of I let go of the things that I have value in myself about. So my artwork, my creative expression, and I was just really doing, I should do this, I should do this, I should do this, which is a very lonely road.
Yeah.
So I kind of crumbled under that pressure and went into a deep depression. Now, as I climbed out of that, I learned that I really had to tap back into what my voice was saying is valuable about me, and what I needed to bring to the world, what I needed to bring to my children and my mothering, that focusing on the outside sources had got me in this really dark place. So coming to the place where I listened to myself above all other people and kind of said, I got this, like I'm trying, and it took, like we were saying, really small, like the very first things I did as I climbed out of that hole. And that was the deepest, darkest part of that hole, was being suicidal.
Wow.
And I was in the hospital for 6 days.
Now, so being suicidal, meaning what? Does that mean thoughts or beyond thoughts, or what does that mean?
It was almost to an action.
Okay.
I had a very clear plan, and I almost acted on that plan, and I pulled off of the highway. A song came on that
oh gosh,
kind of made me snap into reality. And the song was called Home. And I was just like, what am I, it's like the realistic part of my brain kicked in and could talk to the depression part of my brain, because depression, anxiety, like those things lie to us. We are alone. It will never be different. There are no more possibilities. Like, you've tried everything. Like, those are lies. There are infinite possibilities for things we can try to shift out of hard times.
Yeah.
So that song came on, and I was like, oh my God, like the gravity of what I was about to do. And I drove straight home, told my husband what I had been thinking about for the past couple months, how close it came to being a reality. We slept, we went to the hospital the very next morning.
Okay.
So, sorry, pause.
Yes, that's okay. Please pause.
So yeah, and during my time in the hospital, I was like a student. I was like, I have come to this place where I'm starting over. Like, I literally laid my former life down on the ground of that hospital and said, I'm new. Like, what, doing all the things that I've done to this point have not gotten me to a good place. And so I had to really figure it out from square one.
Okay.
So I had a notebook. I was asking everybody questions, writing stuff down. I was really hunting out.
In the hospital?
In the hospital.
Like, who were you asking?
The other patients. Oh. We're all in there shuffling around in our slippers and our heaps of mashed potatoes that they monitor and make sure you're eating enough. And I'm like, why are you here? How did that? Oh, what's addiction like? Oh, that's hard. What? And some people had attempted suicide. So are you pissed now? Have you woken up and you're pissed? I was so curious about what brought us all to this place where we can, the outside world is not our friend, and we're all in this little cocoon together going, what the fuck?
Right.
What happened? So I think because I was a fellow patient,
okay.
they were very open with me, and we just had these really real conversations. And I started to understand that part of my value was that empathy and compassion. There was a craft time during my stay there, and this 16-year-old that was just, I mean, heartbroken at 16 and had lost sight of possibilities. And the blank piece of paper in front of her was so anxiety inducing. And I was like, give me that piece of paper. And I like drew some trees, just some very loose like landscape. So she had something to paint. It was painting time. And the calm that came with her, and I just like showed her a few quick things about painting, and it was this first little spark of like, I have value in this world. Like, I helped her just now. And it was amazing how distant I had gotten from, I have value in this world. Way above and beyond what I drive, what I wear.
Your skills.
But yes, like I have
Yes.
my meaning is to be here. So everything shifted. So right out of the hospital, I noticed like I had to really figure out how to trust myself again. So I would do like, you know how the sun shines on the pavement and like there's a part of the pavement that's hot and a part of the pavement that's cold still in that shady spot. So I would like stand on the pavement and be like, this is cold. And I would move to the hot. This is hot.
Okay, so
this.
I'm going to, so let's back up.
Yeah.
Let's back, because there's lots of questions that I want to ask you,
Sure.
but just that in particular.
Yeah.
So when you talk about, I needed to learn how to trust myself again, and then you went hot and cold. So talk to me a little bit about that. To what level? Sounds like even at the basic level
Yes.
of just, I see what I see. This is white. This is blue.
Yes.
I can feel. I can touch. Is that what you're
Yes.
talking about?
Yes.
Breaking it all the way down?
And I also learned that my relationship was emotionally abusive. So I had come to a place where I didn't trust my versions of anything in the world.
I see.
And learning that learning of like, oh, I've been in this environment that has really shifted how I see the world. I had to get all the way back to square one. So yeah, I started with hot, cold. I like planted little seeds and watched them grow. I see them growing. And that like internalized to me like, oh, I can plant seeds in myself. I'm going to plant self-love. I'm going to plant that there is going to be a sunny day for me at some point. And I would pay attention to those internal seeds as much as I would to my external seeds. And like watching those little seeds come up into leaves, I would like cry every morning, like, this is happening. Like there is life. So yeah, really returning to those things. And once I got down like, okay, I know what I'm seeing is real, I can trust what I feel. Then it really like, I mean, things like, what do I think is funny? Right? Because has everything I've laughed at so far been because I should?
Yeah.
Yeah. Not so far in my whole life, but just
Sure,
in this section of life as like, because I think when we become parents or any of those new like big roles, I think wife, parent, CEO, like any of these like big roles that we're like, oh, there's some rules around that. Right.
Well, there are some rules. That's a good point. There are some rules around that others dictate, but also sometimes we get stuck in our old mindset, right? So we move into these new roles and we allow ourselves to become confused about what that is and what that means, and we're stuck in this mindset. We don't allow our mindset to shift and to grow into those roles as well.
And to challenge the beliefs around that mindset, right?
Yes.
To say like, it can look different then.
It can look different, but even challenging some of the beliefs that you bring with you into this new role. This is brand new. I don't have to feel the same way I felt, or that insecurity doesn't have to travel with me here, or what I thought about this doesn't necessarily have to travel with me. You take some of the good stuff and you leave some of the things behind, right? Yep. So that is definitely a very, very important. And as you know, as I talk to entrepreneurs, as I talk to leaders, when they shift into different roles, sometimes they're bringing some old stuff, old beliefs with them that are preventing them from actually excelling in this new role and becoming and stepping into who they could become.
Yes, right.
So that's interesting. I do want to touch on something because I think this is a message this is something that I land on a lot around that personal value and your value proposition, because many times people don't know how to articulate what they bring to every situation. It's so externally based. It's so based on what others might think or feel or what they say my value is, and so even again, shifting from role to role, who you are, you're bringing your whole self. So that value comes with you.
Yes.
But if you don't know what that is, and if you have a hard time articulating it to yourself, there's no way you can even show up in that confidence, because you're waiting for somebody else to validate.
Yes, and point it out.
And point it out to you, rather than you showing up and saying, no, this is who I am. This is who I bring. This is what I can do. This is what I can do for you.
Yep.
Here's the value I provide you.
Yeah.
Here's your experience you're going to have with me. Because I know the space that I create. That is very challenging. That's one of my personal quests, is to help people to bring that out.
Well, and too, about that, just tying it back to stepping into those new roles, if you don't know what your particular value is, shredded of all the other things, right? We shed those labels and we say, what is my inherent value? If you don't bring that into your new role, then you can probably possibly leave behind the thing that made you attractive to be in that role in the first place.
That's right. Because back to your point, you now have this checklist of whether it's a new personal wife, mother, whatever, or a new leadership role, because somebody has written a job description somewhere.
That's exactly right.
And you're trying to fit yourself into that description versus, I'm going to bust this thing up.
Yep.
And while there's some value there, if I understand the why, I can get you to the why, but I'm bringing what I bring.
Yes. So one of the things I think that I bring value in the world too, that I will say I bring value in the world, is a playful curiosity. It's one of my favorite things about myself now that I know that about myself, or can make that point that that's a value, and bringing that into my role as a business owner, as a CEO, as a leader.
Okay, so let's take it one step further. Okay, so that's the value that you bring. Now, what's my experience with you because of that value?
Oh, I think, you would probably, those playful curiosities would be triggered.
Okay.
Right. So I see when I talk to people and they're in a place where, and this is my employees, my children, whomever, and they're in a place of oh, this thing, it's going the same and I can't break the pattern and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, ooh, but what about, right? So you change the grumble to
Yeah.
And then I can help you see other possibilities for yourself.
Yes. Okay.
Because I will be curious about your anger, frustration, whatever your concern is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that, to me, what I experience is that door opening and the possibility of what I can bring. That's fantastic.
Little bit of soul Windex is what I like to call it. Just clear the windows.
Clear the smog and the dirt and the dust and the,
right. So you can see, because it's going to be ultimately you who sees
of course,
the fix to whatever you're frustrated about. But I just help people get there. Dig a little deeper, maybe.
Love that. And that is the beauty of you being able to articulate your value and the experience that I have stepping into your space.
Yep. Yes, and that CEO might not have playful curiosity on the list, but that is on the list of the kind of CEO I'm going to be. And I have seen it have major value in this business.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Love that. That's fantastic. And that's some of the shift that we need to do more of, in appreciating more of some of those softer skills that we bring into every situation. And it's starting to change as I work more and more with people and organizations. Organizations are starting to realize that the hardcore, this set of skill, this technique, all of those things, while important, don't don't give you the edge that it used to, because technology has leveled the playing field across the board for a lot of people. And so if you don't have or can tap into or appreciate some of those diverse things that the people that you hire bring to your space, you just aren't going to go very far.
And you're not going to get them in the right seat. You're not going to maximize their potential.
Yes.
Yeah, that's super cool. And I think with the recognition of those skills, that I think before I did this really deep dive into who am I and what are my values, I passed them off as like, everybody has that, right? It's those things that are instinctual to us that are very, right? I have a teammate here at Jenni Earl who is instinctual about systems and structure. And we were in a meeting yesterday and she was like, I still just need a little more structure. And I was like, see, you say that to me and I don't even, nothing comes into my head. So I would love for you, that is instinctual to you. You provide like us all with some structure. What does it look like? So being able to tap into the things that are instinctual to us, that come naturally, like that, those are the things we should be paying the most attention to.
Yes.
Which are like I'm using air quotes, easy for us, but those are the things that like we are here to help others with, that it doesn't come easy to everyone.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly. Not realizing that because it's easy to you, it doesn't mean it's a throwaway.
That it's easy.
That's where the value lives.
The value. That's exactly right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I want to go back, if you don't mind. So you had this experience, you were falling into kind of this, slowly get into this depression where you're at the point where you're like, okay, something's got to change. You're now in the hospital. You're interviewing other patients. How long did you spend in the hospital?
6 days.
6 days. Okay. Yep. And while you're there, you're like, okay, I'm leaving here a new person.
Yes.
It was kind of baptism by fire, right? I'm just shedding the
very
old.
Phoenix, like whatever mythology that you want to use around that, like death in life kind of. Yes.
Okay. Yes, out with the old, in with the new. So you came out and you said on this journey of starting to trust yourself again. Now, you were a mother of young boys, you were married, and you were living in another state. You weren't living where you are.
I was in Winston.
You were in Winston. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so at this time. So talk to me a little bit about, how long did it take you to go from there to now I'm going to start a business? Like,
oh yeah, it was a minute. That was about, okay, so there's a little bit of a twist in that too. So about a year and a half,
okay,
I think it was, after the hospital, I started a different business.
Oh, okay.
So I knew that I needed to use my, one of the things I came to from being in the hospital to even being able to go have lunch with a friend and not feel really self-conscious and strange was about 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
So it was a very like quiet baby step sort of plan.
Okay.
Where I really paid attention to, am I answering yes to this because it feels good and makes me feel stronger? Am I answering yes to this because I should?
Yeah. So you were shoulding yourself.
I shed friendships. I shed a lot of my social calendar was shed.
Wow.
I started saying no to a lot of things, and I brought on some things that made me feel good. So I had studied costume design in graduate school, and so I started volunteering at the School of Arts costume shop. And just that same moment of like helping a student figure out how to fasten this ribbon to make it look like the costume they were wanting to do. So I did a lot in the millinery, that's the hat making section of that, and helped some students figure things out, which helped build up my value, right?
Yes,
so I just made really intentional choices. So that it's a long process.
It is a long process. And I do want to touch, because I think this is where we talk about small incremental steps. That first no, someone wanted to whatever, have lunch or talk to you or spend time with you, and you realize this is probably not, I don't know what your thought process, this is probably not a relationship, or maybe I'm just not in a space to go have lunch right now. That first no, I'm sure that was incredibly difficult.
Yes.
And what was around that? Like, what were you feeling? And then ultimately you decided, I'm just going to say no anyway. And then was it instant relief, or did you feel that that was at the right thing? So I know the first time is probably the hardest.
Yep.
And then incrementally it gets better. But help me understand kind of like that first no.
Yes. And I was the wife of a doctor. So there were lots of yeses that I didn't fulfill me in the creative artistic world that I had chosen for myself in my former life or whatever. Yes, so the first couple were gut churning leading up to the invitation would come in, let me get back to you, and I would just fret and fret and fret and fret. As soon as the words came out of my mouth, it was instant peace. And then I started noticing, how can I hold that peace when I show up in the way that is good for me? It feels good. So how can I get there faster? Because the turmoil was all internal. So yeah, I just started doing that check-in, like, does this feel good or does it feel icky? Or like, what is the ickiness? Is it, I'm afraid I'm going to disappoint them? Or is it like, oh, this is kind of hard, but it's something I should that I should be doing for myself, right? So yeah, the first couple were just absolutely gut-wrenching, you're right.
Yeah.
But then the calm, so trying to come to the calm faster became kind of a goal.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important thing and there are things, right? We do exist in this world, so there are things we're going to do. Sometimes, I may not feel like, whatever, making dinner, but I'm making dinner, right? We're not talking about, we're not talking about everything has to feel good and flowery and fantastic. That's not what we're talking about.
Is, full of jobs.
Yes, full of things, absolutely.
Yeah.
But but sometimes people don't create boundaries around some of that, and everything is obligatory or we must because I'm married to a doctor and this is my social calendar, and were you a stay-at-home mom? Okay, so I'm a stay-at-home mom, and still people don't understand what that role is like.
Oh my goodness, no.
So all of that. So making those small adjustments and that it is very, very difficult. I love though that you said the fretting and then physically feeling ill, but as soon as you said no, then there was a peace. You understood, okay, this was the right thing. And for some people though, even after the no, they may feel like was that the right thing, and it might take a little bit of time, but that's okay.
Yeah, right.
But through that practice and through understanding and tapping into, it's okay for me to create boundaries for myself. It's okay for me to, from a resilience perspective, say no. Yes, no sometimes is one of the most powerful tool that you can use from a leadership perspective, from a personal perspective. It is difficult, and you may disappoint someone else.
Yeah, you might. But that should come second to disappointing yourself and your authenticity. Absolutely, 100%. And I think, when I talk to other people who have stuck with me and we've figured it out, right? Of course, I have relationships that have lasted through this tumultuous personal journey. And we talk about that point, and from the outside, they're seeing me creating a lot of conflict because I'm changing the dance steps in almost all of my relationships. What that felt to me was I'm finally finding peace. So on the outside, it completely flipped. So where on the outside perspective, before I showed up for myself, there was all this external peace. Everyone looked beautiful. The house was beautiful. We had social calendar that whatever. We were going and doing and being seen, and everything looked great, but I was a mess inside. And then when the shift came, it kind of looked messy outside as far as I'm changing dance steps. People are kind of confused and angry and maybe being judgmental for a time. But internally, I was at peace. So pick your peace, right? And that should come. I would I will offer that from my understanding, if you're internally at peace, you can handle so much bullshit. Like lots of things can be happening. You're like, I got this. Yeah, that's the first place we should be tidying for sure.
I would agree with that.
Our hearts and minds and souls.
Yes.
Get that.
Absolutely, that resilience.
Get that tidy
and
up.
what's interesting though is when things do get busy or get a little bit of hectic or things start piling on, a lot of times that's the first thing to go. Is we allow ourselves to expend so much without realizing or forgetting that, no, I've got to create this boundary. I have to, whatever that is for you, whether it's 15 minutes sitting in a quiet room in a corner somewhere, whatever that is for you.
Yep.
But, or it's you working out, whatever that might be,
Yeah.
having that time and sometimes being able to say no. And I love that you said, of course, that you do have some relationships that rode that
Yes,
wave with you.
absolutely.
And they then, you showing up as you, they didn't, your whole entire world was crumbling, but it didn't fall apart.
It did not fall apart completely. Every step I took, the solid ground I stood on got a little bit larger in scope. It was amazing over the next 2.5 years. The relationships that did weather through are stronger than ever. My relationship with my mother in particular, I really learned unconditional love from her. She did not understand why I was doing what I was doing, until she saw me authentic and happy, right? So this months later, after all the divorce, after a lot of turmoil, and she was like, oh my gosh, you're back. It's like she forgot, right? From all of those acts I was putting on, what the real me was like. It was like my childhood me was back. And just that she kept showing up even when she didn't understand, to argue with me about it was a beautiful thing. And now our relationship is so solid and so strong. Yeah. I'm very grateful.
Fantastic.
Grateful for that. So yeah, you're not going to lose the people that you're supposed to have around you.
Right. And that shift and that change in relationships is often difficult as well, but on the other side, and you get through it. So you were telling me that after that, you started another business.
Yes, I started a different business with a friend of mine from home.
Okay.
It was called the Suburban Outlaws.
Okay.
We were, laughing about that we were driving Suburbans, and we used to do lots of other things, and here we are waiting in preschool pickup line in our Suburbans. So we started a company, and it was the why of it, the choose your own trail sort of mindset of it was the same. So she and I started that. I was still married at the time, so we started that. That caused even more conflict within my marriage. It seemed like the stronger I got and the more of an independent whole human I became, the more conflict was in that relationship.
I see.
That relationship worked when I was weak and subservient. It did not work when I was standing tall. So that helped, like that friendship helped me take some big leaps, take the risk of starting a business. She really believed in my artistic ability, so I designed everything that we sold. She went through some hard stuff in her life, reacted to it in a way that I didn't understand, and ended up embezzling and putting us out of business. So she embezzled like over $30,000. So,
wow.
So in the midst of owning that, it was 3 years owning that business. I went through separation, divorce, moving to a rental home, the custody of my children shifting. All of those things happened, within that business going. So that was another time where the world kind of fell out from under me because I had done the work to create my own straight spine, so to speak. It was a much easier recovery.
Not as devastating.
Being able to share with my children what happened, to see me get really knocked about by the circumstances of the world and stand back up tall. Like, we all cried together. What are we going to do next together? So it was, I think they were like 7 and 9 at the time. So it was a really neat time for them to see like, oh, you can get really surprised by the twists and turns of life. But we stand back up. We keep showing up. Right.
Yeah.
So I would set a timer. This is a great, if you're going through anything that's like super hard, but you got to keep getting out of bed. I would set a timer and do like a 20-minute wallow and just be mad at her and mad at the world and crying and just the self-pity just heaped on.
Yes.
And then the timer would go off and be like, okay, all right, what's next?
Yes. I love that idea.
So this kind of process of like, you got to do that.
Of course.
But you can't stay there.
You can't stay there.
That's not going to do anything.
But you do have to process them, which means you have to feel them. Feeling them is not the same thing as wallowing and getting into them or letting them control you. It just means here's something that I need to process and work through to get to the other side.
That's
right. To build that resilience, to even to build, as you said, I can do it. Like I can wallow and get out of it. I can cry and be done with it. I shared a quick story just a couple weeks ago. I had something crazy happen. To keep all the technical details out, anyway, I was moving my domain to another site.
Okay.
In the midst of that, nearly all of my business data and documents were lost. They were just gone for a while.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. And I thought, including some of my podcast interviews that I had done previously, including just all my corporate documents, data on just stuff, client. I had a day. It was just a
listeners,
couple weeks.
The face she's making, I'm sure you can imagine. It's like, like what? Yeah.
What is going on? So I spend the day thinking, if I don't get anything else back, and I had to go through that process. Like, I'm going to be sick. I just want to go sit in the corner and cry. And then at some point in the day, later in the evening, I was like, you know what? Okay. Yeah, it took some time. The last couple years might be gone.
Just like that.
Just like that. Just like that. But if you did it once, you can do it again. That's right. And potentially it wouldn't take you as long, right? All those ideas are there.
Priority lists, right?
Right? And so I understand, exactly. This is just still pretty fresh, but I understand what you're saying. And so, long story short, I got some of it back.
Okay.
I got some of the more important things back. There are still some things that are a little bit gut-wrenching that I lost. And part of it was misunderstanding, miscommunication, dealing with other people. But I also said, you know what? This is 100% on me. I took 100% responsibility. And I said, I'm not going to blame. I'm wiser now. I'll never work with X again. And I'm a technical person. My background is in technology. So I was also embarrassed that something like this would happen. I spent 25 years in IT, and to think that something like, and I just, but I thought, you know what? But it happens.
It happens.
And so we're gonna
the empathy you
gained
for those
That's right. We're gonna get through it, and we're gonna move on. So but I did have to. Same thing. I said, I'm gonna have to give myself a time, and then what I did was I fired myself.
Oh, interesting.
I wrote myself a firing that part because in part I also was able to recognize there was probably some decisions that I'd either held off on or didn't, wasn't confident in or whatever. So I wrote myself a letter to fire myself so that I can rehire myself come Monday and be ready to go.
Right.
Yeah.
You hired the disaster relief part of
That's
yourself
right.
to
That's
come
right.
back in.
Yeah.
That's kind of amazing. And that gives your heart and mind permission to be like, okay, we kicked her out.
Yes.
We're going to now what's going, what are the new rules going forward?
Exactly.
That's kind of beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, it was just because I realized there was still, after being in corporate for so many years, it's hard to get some of those things out, and I started recognizing some of those old patterns, those old way of thinking that I had to let go of so that I could continue growing in the business, being a business owner, right? So all of that, I had to do it.
Different muscles,
very,
for sure.
very different muscles. That's a whole nother thing. But yes,
Right. Oh, my
yes. So
goodness. So
I
yes.
can appreciate and understand just giving yourself the time. Do it. Go through it. Talk
Yep.
to whoever. You can do all that.
Yep.
But process it so that you can come out of it and move forward.
And start to clear that window and see what possibilities lie ahead. Yeah. I think everyone listening can identify with a moment where like their life took a dramatic left turn or right turn, you know, just like something happened and it's like, oh, well, things will never be like they were.
Yes.
But to be curious, to learn.
Yeah.
Oh, resilience.
I know, resilience. By the way, we're sitting in a Reiki healer's room. Is that what this is called?
That's exactly right.
So it's kind of a meditation, kind of a...
Yeah, lots of stones and crystals and good vibes in here. Yeah, my head of sales is also a Reiki healer. She's the best communications person, the best customer nurturer I have ever seen.
That's fantastic.
I hired her to do shipping part-time. And she was like, can I write to this customer and tell them that I thought of them when I saw this thing and blah, blah, blah. I was like, of course. And very quickly I was like, you need to be in this seat over here. Like, I didn't even know I could hire someone for this seat. But yes, like, you're going to sit here and you're going to nurture our customers. And it was one of the best decisions I've ever made. And she's still,
That's
she didn't know
fantastic.
she was that skill set either, right? It's
Wow.
those instinctual things that...
But it also
You can
takes a
keep
boss
it
to be able to see that, identify it, be willing to put somebody in a different seat, and then let her just be. And everybody benefits.
Yes. And say, yes, keep doing that.
Yes.
Oh, well, of course I would do this. It's like, yeah, of course.
Yes.
So sit there and do it.
That wasn't in
Yeah,
the
it's
job
pretty
description, by
wonderful.
the way, folks.
I know. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Okay.
So that's a business now. Now you're at the point where what's the next step? What are you deciding?
Right. Well, I kind of shifted to just art. I'm
Okay.
just going to make art. I'm going to raise the kids. I got some part-time jobs. I did commit to I will only work in creative capacities. So that looked like painting the inside of a church downtown. That looked like I managed the Cobblestone Farmers Market here in town, which is our sustainable farmers market, and interacting with those people and their growing of their own businesses. And I got to be really like intermixed in this really great group of people who kind of helped me stand back up, and they saw in me the value that I was trying to show. So being in that environment, and then I came, right back around as a creative to why I'm on this earth, and that is to tell you. So what I learned in a nutshell from hospital to present day
Okay.
is I am far braver and stronger than I ever would have imagined. So I know for a fact that you are too. So I thought, oh my gosh, this is why I'm here. How can I get this to the world? So I started thinking back on my life as to was there ever an object or something that we could hold and wear, or what, as a costume design background, I'm like, what could I make to help people realize this in their lives? And my grandfather's bandanas were that to me growing up. So he would be wiping off a car he was working on or something, and set the bandana off, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm so brave and strong. Because he's larger than life. He's just turned 90. He's
Wow.
amazing. He's still hilariously funny. He can take an entire car apart and put it back together.
Wow.
Which was that's God status in my mind as an 8-year-old. I was like, whoa, that's so cool. So that, I was like, oh, that's a really simple thing that we all have and know, a bandana. It's a universal project, or a universal product. So I could really take that, redesign it, right? Make it my own. So that's what I did. So I started 5 years ago with one bandana style that says "Be Brave." Just has some nice, simple hatchmark patterns. It's still one of our best sellers today. But people really resonated with it and resonated with the story, and oh, I can hold on to this for my courage. I can stick it in my purse if I'm not a bandana wearer. So 5 years, 1.5 million in sales, 18 different bandana designs later.
Wow.
Here we sit.
Yes.
I wake up every morning pinching myself that I get to wake up every day and go, you are so much braver than you think. Go do the thing. Make the small shift. Like,
Yes.
take a step in the direction of something that you don't think you got, because you got it. Like, we are capable. We just have to put a little bit of, like, little fire, little guts, and, like, just
And it's
do it. Take one step.
one step, one thing.
One thing.
I mean, if
Yeah.
you had somebody told you 10 years ago, you're going to be selling bandanas and making over $1 million, you'd be like, what in
crazy.
the world are you talking about?
Right. And I was led by the why.
Okay.
So why I want to make anything is to offer this talisman to people, to offer something to hold and know this thing that I've uncovered from some really hard living. Like, I know this. And so starting from there, instead of like, what's trending right now?
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Yes.
What colors? It's like it all, everything that we make and sell comes really from the expression of why. So starting there has been a really beautiful way to build this company.
And why is it important for you to have that as a foundation? What does that do for your business, having that why?
It's a funnel. I mean, it's a easy decision maker.
Okay.
So people, as all business owners know, people write to you all the time going, can you donate this or that? Can you, partnerships with like, oh, do you want to partner with this company on this particular thing? We go, does it fit the why?
Yep.
Yes or no? And it like becomes really easy when you become very clear on what the company is supposed to do from an emotional level. You don't have to fret about like, oh, this seems like it could be a great opportunity and maybe we shouldn't pass it up. And to make custom bandanas for this thing that has no affiliation with your guts and your why.
Yeah.
You just say, nope, I'm sorry, that doesn't align. Good luck,
Yes.
So it makes those kind of things, which that's a time saver. I mean,
Well, yes.
time is the only thing we cannot reproduce.
That's right.
So time saving is a huge thing for any founders.
Yes.
Right. So
Well, and it's
yeah.
also it's a time saver. It eliminates the stress. It makes it a little bit more objective. And as you said, emotionally, you're like, oh, but what if this blossoms into it? But if it doesn't fit your why, so it helps you to, again, we talked earlier about boundaries and creating scope. That is the boundary you've created and you're sticking with it. And some people are afraid to do that because they think they're missing out on all these opportunities, where in essence, it's the opposite. Where when you stretch yourself so thin or trying to do everything, you don't have any idea where you're going.
Yeah, or try to please everyone. I have found too, when I have said no to something that was potentially like a high volume of sales, for example, to this company, and we don't have to get into why it didn't align, but I said no. It was like, ooh, that was economically, that could have been a good decision for our cash flow or bottom line. And what that did was, it was a lesson in, if this company over here that doesn't align with us is willing to spend at that level, then what would an aligned company do? So we started looking for those kind of partnerships. So it was kind of a fun, like, oh, okay, you want to buy that many bandanas? But it doesn't quite fit,
Right.
but who would? And I think it opened us up to then feeling the confidence to approach somebody with that size of a partnership. So it can just teach you, and you keep setting up the boundaries as you go, and figuring it out.
And the boundary doesn't go in front of you as if you stop traveling down the road. It just keeps you on the right road.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay.
Yeah.
And so you've got 18 styles now. You've got, I don't know, do you do seasonally? Do you have a website?
Yeah,
how do you sell? What do you like?
We have a website. One of our favorite things is Instagram. We love the community that we've created there. We get so many tagged photographs. So people wearing them and look, I'm on the top of this mountain, or I've traveled to Thailand by myself. We have this amazing story of a woman who called us after she got back from Thailand. She was traveling solo, which was something she didn't think she'd be brave enough to do. She had her Jenni Earl Feel the Fear, Do It Anyway bandana tied on her backpack. She's walking through this tiny, like, open air airport and saw another woman traveler. And as they passed, she looked back and she had a Jenni Earl bandana on her backpack too. And they like hugged and laughed and screamed and had a moment of connection across the world. I have chills. Across the world. Like that's what we're doing. It's like this high five, you know?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that.
For it. So we love like sharing those stories. We've done a ton of interviews on our blog with people who are just leveling up to their authenticity or leveling up in their courage. And again, it can be like really small things. It can be really big things.
Yes.
But oftentimes it's the small things that lead to
big things.
To the big thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's another interesting, because people want the big thing, but they forget big things just don't create themselves. It's built out of the smaller things.
Absolutely.
You know, it's like you don't get up one day and go run 50 miles. You start with one.
Yeah.
Or walk, or buying the right shoes. Like, honestly, it starts with like setting the alarm clock.
Yes. Or like read an article about where your foot should fall. Yeah,
yes.
It's like those.
Watching the YouTube video on the breathing and the technique, and then you put the shoes on it. Right? It's all these small little things that build into the bigger thing. We want that before and after picture. We want that hair. I was 400 pounds and now I'm 180 pounds.
Yeah.
But what they don't show, sometimes they do show it. And I had pointed this out to a client once. I was like, you see this before and after. You see down here? Because it was a 12-week program. It was a 12-week program. I said, but you see that? It said that they went through that 12-week program 3 times. It wasn't 12 weeks
Over
for that
4
person.
years.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So that before and after, it's those small incremental. We just are so fast, and I'm fascinated with it too. But I prefer if I see someone's journey, like if they've taken a picture every day for the year. That's more fascinating to me than just this before and after, because I get more inspired by, oh well, gosh, it's not even till like 3 months in where you're seeing any difference,
right?
You know,
or where you're not struggling at the end of the first mile.
Yeah.
And I think those little opportunities to be brave and listen very closely to those things our heart is whispering to us. Yeah. Those opportunities come with every decision we make.
Absolutely. And sometimes, here's the thing though, sometimes we are going to make the wrong decision.
Sure.
Sometimes you're going to be brave and fall on our face. Sometimes you're going to be brave and it's not going to work out. But it's the being brave part that you're building that competency and then
habits
and the habits
and muscles. Bring
it right back to the very beginning.
And
of
sometimes
that
the
habit.
brave choice is saying no and laying on your couch for a full day. That's what I did this weekend, and watched the Gilmore Girls. Because that's what felt good for that day, because I had nothing else to give anyone. And courage to be like, I'm just going to lay here and not feel bad about it.
Yes.
It can mean all the different things, but I think the courage to listen to your heart and act on its behalf is really what we're trying to do here.
It's the combination. It's not just about the action. It's not just about the feeling. It's the combination, and acting out of integrity, acting out of boldness, acting out of the trust in self. That's so huge. Trusting instincts, trusting yourself, being brave, all of those things.
Yeah.
Wow. So fascinating. I love that. I love that story. Well, thank you so much, Jenni, for
oh my goodness, thank
hanging
you.
out with me and this time. So it's been great. And I had so many great nuggets here, and just I know it'll be inspiring to leaders of all kinds, small business, big business, entrepreneurs, any mothers. It's going to be inspiring. And
people who are alive.
People who are alive. Anybody who's alive. But I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Absolutely.